On the blood-soaked plains of Kurukshetra stood a man who possessed a divine boon called Icha Mritu, the power to choose his own death. His name was Bhishma, and he literally could not be killed against his will. By the end of the war, this untouchable patriarch lay paralyzed on a bed of arrows, defeated by a single woman, whom society had dismissed as collateral damage. Bhishma engineered his own destruction the moment he stripped a woman of her agency to satisfy his own sense of duty. This tragedy began at a Swayamvar in Kashi, where Princess Amba was meant to choose her husband. Bhishma violently crashed the event, defeating the kings and abducting her and her sisters by force to secure the Kuru lineage. Upon arriving in Hastinapur, Amba refused the marriage. She informed Bhishma that her heart was already committed to another ruler, King Salwa. Bhishma allowed her to leave, operating by a rigid adherence to Dharma. In his view, forcing a woman whose heart belonged to another was against the ancient code of righteous duty. While Bhishma believed he was acting honorably by letting her go, his intervention had already set the stage for the systematic destruction of Amba's life. Amba traveled to King Salwa, but instead of the reunion she expected, he immediately rejected her. Salwa's ego was bruised. Amba was now viewed as tainted property won by another man in combat, leaving her without standing. She returned to Hastinapur, demanding Bhishma take moral responsibility. Since his actions cost her her intended husband, she insisted he marry her himself. Bhishma cited his famous, unbreakable vow of lifelong celibacy. To him, the promise made to his father was more important than the woman before him. Amba was now trapped in a societal void. With no husband, no home, and no protector, she stood as proof that the era's systems of justice had entirely failed her. Instead of despairing, Amba's grief crystallized into rage. She abandoned human society and walked into the wilderness alone. She spent years in extreme penance, or tapasya. She remained motionless through violent storms and shifting seasons, pushing her body to the brink for vengeance. Failing with mortal kings, she bypassed human law entirely, demanding an audience with Lord Shiva. Shiva granted a specific boon. She would cause Bhishma's death. This divine intervention shifted the balance of power. Amba was no longer collateral damage in a political game. She was now the specific instrument of Bhishma's end. But a problem remained. How does a mortal woman execute an invincible man who has sworn never to raise a weapon against a woman? Amba threw herself into a fire to accelerate the boon, dying so she could be reincarnated as the royal child Shikhandi. Born female and later becoming male, Shikhandi acted as a living loophole. This duality was designed to short-circuit Bhishma's binary martial code. At the climax of the Kurukshetra war, Shikhandi rode on Arjuna's chariot, leading the charge directly at Bhishma. Bhishma recognized Amba's soul within Shikhandi. Bound by his honor not to strike someone born a woman, he lowered his weapons and accepted a gruesome death. Bhishma's fatal flaw was his belief that his rigid, unbending vows were the ultimate source of his strength. Amba won by turning Bhishma's own inflexible morality against him. She transformed his rigid code into the very trap that ensured his death. Blindly enforcing rules at the expense of human dignity inevitably creates the very monsters that will tear the system apart.